100th anniversary of Macedonia AME Church in Pearl City. It is thought to be the oldest church in Boca Raton. African American supporters from all over the state have come here to celebrate its existence. While the anniversary service goes on, a man in a truck shows up to deliver food for the congregants. His name, Wayne Barton, Pearl City's Pied Piper. And this is his story.
It's been a long day, boy.
I can imagine. But first, some history of this small enclave within Boca Raton, known as Pearl City. Sue Gillis of the Boca Raton Historical Society.
Pearl City was established north of what was, I laughingly call downtown Boca Raton, in a little tiny farming village, essentially, for the African American community in 1915. Before that, there was no place for the African American citizens who worked on local farms to live where they would be welcome in those days of segregation. This is a map showing the plat of Pearl City, and this was issued at the time of the original auction, which was 1915. And you can see the layout of the community. And we're soliciting people to come and buy property in the community.
And what's the one on the right?
The one on the right is actually the reverse of the map. And you can see there was a specific auction on April 26th. And I find it very amusing that it offers a free boat ride from West Palm Beach, Boynton, and Del Rey, and a big free fish dinner at the sale. So this is soliciting not just local residents, but people from pretty far away, West Palm Beach, to come and invest in property in Pearl City.
Development was slow, but people did come. In the early years, this was a peaceful area, the only area African Americans could live. But in the mid-70s, when the crack epidemic hit the country, areas like this, poorer areas, were the worst affected. That was when Wayne Barton entered the picture. In 1980, he became a police officer and was assigned here to Pearl City.
Back in the crack days, when the epidemic hits Boca Raton, you have this small black community, and so whenever you need drugs, you go to the hood. You go to the hood, you're gonna make contact, you drive either from Federal Highway through Pearl City or Dixie Highway through Federal Highway, and you're gonna make contact with somebody that's gonna do a transaction. And you smoke it and you come back, you smoke it and you come back until your resources are not there anymore. And you get desperate. You go and give your car, you're in college here, or your parents' car, you do a transaction with the drug dealer. And then after you smoke the drugs up, you go down to the police department. And you say, look, I was at the mobile station in Pearl City getting gas, and somebody took my car. Somebody snatched my car. So they sit down, okay, we're gonna enter it into the computer as a stolen vehicle. And you got this black guy who just did a transaction in his head, cruising, and had got no lights and sirens. So he guns it, now you got a hot pursuit. Now you're endangering other people's lives. And then when they catch the guy, the black guy, they incarcerate him, the white guy gets his car back, and life goes on until he does it again.
Wayne had grown up in nearby Deerfield Beach, in another largely Afro-American enclave. It too was a rough and violent community. He attended Deerfield Beach Middle School. Glenda Sweeting was his 6th grade teacher.
Wayne was there. He was in that group of kids, in that pocket of poverty. 2 of the kids wound up being murdered. One of the boys wound up being on death row. He had killed someone. He used to draw pictures about he was going to kill people. Brought a gun to school one day. It was a tough group of kids, really a tough group.
Was Wayne part of that group, the tough group?
Wayne was part of that group because that's where he was placed. I don't see Wayne, never did see Wayne as being a troublemaker. He was kind of the peacemaker. He was pretty level-headed. He was a nice kid, but he was in really bad circumstances.
Phil Sweeting, Glenda's husband, was captain of the road patrol for the Boca Police Department. Once he joined the Boca Police Department, Wayne had a stellar career, he says, with only a few infractions. He assigned him to community policing in Pearl City.
Well, initially it was community policing back in those days, and the idea of community policing was to have like a beat cop walking your neighborhood, and he would handle all those problems in that neighborhood, and that's the task Wayne took on. However, he was responsible for handling calls simultaneously. Now, my philosophy, I guess, on community policing was you have to really be in and part of the community, and you have to be there full time. So Wayne was doing this part-time as well as handling calls. And one day I called him into my office. I was saying, Wayne, either we're going to do this right or we're not going to do it at all. And I felt he had to be assigned to the Pearl City area full-time without the responsibility of calls, because you couldn't interact with the people then be called away.
I didn't want to do traditional policing. I had guys sitting under the tree with milk crates, and they're all gathered and they're just kind of hanging out, but they're selling drugs. You know what they're doing. They're not selling Girl Scout cookies. They're selling drugs. So in lieu of going in with cops and billy clubs and beating them and macing them and just, because they're going to come back. So what I did was I pruned the tree back. They're under the tree because it's providing shade. So I had the city to come in and took pruners and prune the tree back, cut it way back. They stopped hanging out.
So you tried to build a rapport with the drug dealers too?
Oh, sure. No, more so respect. I didn't care about the report. You got respect, and report came out there. You got to respect you, because if they don't respect you, they'll try you. They'll challenge you. There could be a problem. I want respect. I don't want you to like me. I'm not running for mayor. I just want you to respect my position that I hold. I'll respect your position. And when I come on the streets and I say, boys, it's time to go home. It's time to go home. And when I said that, they moved, because they know I had zero tolerance for nonsense. Without killing them, without beating them up, but being within the scope of my description of my job and doing it well, because I knew the people. A lot of times I go talk to their parents. I talk to their grandmother. I talk to her relative. I talk to their girlfriend. I talk to their wives. You got to talk to them. You got to bring them off the streets. There's no end. I mean, there's incidents where I got called in the middle of the night where other drug dealers came from other cities and robbed them right on the corner there and killed them all on the street, and went in their pockets and took their money and rode off. To this day, we never found out a lot of the shootings on the corner who was involved with them. So again, that whole drug epidemic, it has different legs, and it brings a different texture, a different problem to the neighborhood.
Why did drugs so infest this area?
Well, again, you have the black community, and you have the white community outside supporting it. You know, there was no resources, it was limited resources in this community to keep the drug dealer on the street. He could buy 1 or 2 rocks, but nothing like when the white kids came in and had money. I mean, it's a big difference when your parents giving you a credit card with no limit on it. You can cash it in, and you can buy all the drugs you want.
He became known for going the extra mile to serve the Pearl City community. He won awards. He set up an after-school learning center in this 2-story building in the community. His commitment to helping kids was reinforced by a family tragedy that had happened earlier.
My father got in an argument. My father told my oldest brother, you either go back to school and continue education, or you get a job. When I come home from work, I expect to have an answer from you. My older brother didn't have an answer. He just didn't do anything. So my dad began to get his clothing and put them in garbage bags, and we had an open car porch. And he began to put his stuff out and him out. And somehow or another, my brother came behind him and jumped him with a hammer and just started beating him. And my mother called me crying, just crying. She said, you need to come. Something has happened real bad. So I get there, and fire rescue, their first responders, and my dad's standing in the driveway, and he's telling the responders to go get my son. I want to hold his hand for the last time. And blood's running down the driveway. And I got there and I asked my father, I said, who did this to you? And he said, your brother. At the time, I was a police officer, and I went to every police car out there. I thought he was incarcerated. They had apprehended him. And I looked in each car, and he was not in it. I drew my weapon, and they drew down on me and took my weapon from me. Later that evening, my brother turned himself into Deerfield Police Department with blood all over him and with the hammer in his hand. My dad didn't die at that time, but he recently died after that. We found him dead in the house.
How long after that?
Maybe a week, not long. It was a tragedy, just a real tragedy for the whole family. And later, after my father died, my mother passed away. She was battling breast cancer, and she said even the day of his funeral that she was just so unhappy. She had been married so many years, and she just can't imagine living without him. And she gave up fighting.
His mother, Burnett, died less than 1 year after his father, Willie's death.
So when my brother was sentenced 11 years in prison for this tragic, tragic moment. And when he made contact with me after 11 years, I told him, I said, you know, you actually killed mom and dad. You didn't just only kill dad because she didn't have the desire to live anymore. I said, I've forgiven you, but I haven't forgotten.
Wayne expanded and moved his after-school learning program to this site in 2000, the Wayne Barton Center. And even today, 19 years after he moved here, he is still hands-on, transporting the kids here himself and cooking meals for the kids. But he explained the focus of the center is education.
Again, if you don't give them education, you give them all the toys in the world. You can make them the greatest athlete in the world. But if they don't have education, they have nothing.
During football season, I go to school. You know, I go to school, I get out at 3:20. I go to football practice from 3:40 to 5:40 or 6 o'clock. You know, after practice, I'm tired, I'm beat up, you know. And I come to Wayne Barton, it's like about 6:05, 6:10, you know. And they have a meal waiting for me. Me and the friends that I bring here, the other football players, you know, they come here too. And they have a meal waiting for me, and I'd get my homework done, use the computer, and I might go in the gym if I have a little energy left, you know. It all depends.
And what would he be doing if he wasn't at the Wayne Barton Center studying?
Honestly, I'd probably be at home, just sitting, being lazy, you know, being on my phone all the time, you know.
We're telling a child, forget about the classroom. Worry about the football field. Worry about the basketball court. Worry about soccer. Don't worry about that. All will take care of itself. We're sending our children the wrong message. And at the Wayne Barton Study Center, we clarify that message. There's only so many colleges. There's only so many pro teams. How do you take the larger number and squeeze it into the smaller number? And you be a part of that.
Wayne appeals today to latchkey kids whose parents work and can't be home to supervise their homework. His graduates confirm that was why their parents sent them here. And there were other reasons. Devarius Jackson.
I think the main thing is that my mom was looking at the surroundings that I was brought up in and wanted to keep me busy and also wanted to improve on my education with my reading and my math. So I did a lot of tutorial studies here at Wayne Barton Study Center from the educational side of things, which helped me in the long run.
But Devarius Jackson didn't come from Boca. He came from nearby Delray Beach. In those days, Delray had a significant drug, gang, and crime problem.
Did you ever see shootings or hear shootings?
I heard it a lot. You know, I also witnessed some at some parties that I went to back in high school. You know, so that's something that I'm not going to say common or should take place in the community, but there were things that took place in the community.
Did you see anybody really injured at any point?
Yes, I saw some kids my age at the time I was in high school that was injured, and I also saw some adults, you know, that was at the block parties that was shot, where there was a drive-by shooting or a fight broke out or whatever.
People killed?
Yes, there was a guy that was killed at one party that I attended.
Tavarius Jackson studied hard and went on to Virginia Tech. He got a football scholarship and today is giving back by coaching Delray kids. But for Wayne's graduates who can't afford college, Wayne makes it happen.
I give them a free ride. The kids get accepted at any university, any college, anywhere, not just in Florida. Everything is paid for. Not only we pay for the full ride, but we take each kid shopping to Bed Bath & Beyond. We get everything that they need for college. We give each kid a laptop computer. And
He teaches them they have to give back for all they have received. And he believes the government has made it too easy for young people to get welfare.
You tell a black girl, you says, you know, if you have 5 kids and 5 different daddies, baby daddies, you can get welfare, AFDC, child support. You don't have to pay rent and housing. And that's a lot of money. Now, if you got married and get an education, you don't get all that. So what are you saying to me? I'm saying to you, don't hand something, don't give it to them. Let them earn it. But say to that same little girl that you can have a lot more than that if you just continue to stay focused on school, stay out of trouble, don't get pregnant before your time. But we don't tell that to the kids. We kind of just let them do what they want to do. And like a gentleman said in my office, Wayne, if you send them all to college, who's going to cut the grass at my country club? Who's going to wash the dishes in my restaurant? Some of us have to fail so that someone can live comfortably. I don't buy into that concept.
C. Ron Allen was a reporter for the Sun-Sentinel and dubbed Wayne Barton the Pied Piper of the community.
Wayne has a way of galvanizing people. Wayne came from the community. Therefore, he knew the needs of the community. He knew how to get to people's pulse. He knew what they were lacking, and he was able to relate to them. So he went in as a police officer, and while he was fighting crime, he was still attending to the other needs, the academics, the after-school curricular activities, the food, the extra medical treatment they need or medical care they needed, anything that he took for that child to be well-rounded and be prepared for life outside of school. He was there to provide that. So when you're providing those resources and services to people, what's going to happen? They're going to want to follow you more. And they saw that he was wholesome, he was pure, and he was well-intended. Here you have a cop. You had a cop doing this. How often do you have that? At least back then, not often. Where you had a police officer who was used to, because back then the mindset was police officers would come in, they would arrest you, and they would settle it. But you had a guy who was trying to reach people before they got in the system.
Wayne's office is today filled with awards he received and people he has met. He showed us an award that he is particularly proud of, the 1,000 Points of Light Award, an award from President Bush to those who have made extraordinary contributions to society. But some in the police department resented his celebrity. Again, his boss, Phil Sweeting.
And unfortunately, they don't see the good that Wayne was doing. They just see all the awards he's winning, and there's egos and jealousies. And like I told Glenda before, or somebody, I said, as long as he's wearing that patch on his arm that says Boca Raton Police Department, and he's helping the kids, he's going to keep doing it. I don't really care about Wayne Barton and his awards, but he's helping kids, and it's also a reflection of the Boca Raton Police Department, even though some within the police department were I don't know the right term to use.
Jealous.
They were jealous. And so that was also an issue that he had to deal with.
Example, Wayne was given an honorary doctorate from Florida Atlantic. Jealousy in the police department led to racist slurs.
Same day he received an honorary degree from FAU, he came back to his office and there was a copy of a diploma in his cubicle saying you may be a doctor, but you're still an N-word. You may be a doctor, but you're still a
It did happen, says Barton, but what was dropped off at his desk was not a diploma but a piece of paper with those words. There were other incidents. Barton complained, and officers were disciplined, but Wayne paid a price too.
They scrutinized Wayne. Everything he did, he was under scrutiny. That chief, I remember in an interview one day, he said to me, "See, Ron, Wayne's problem is Wayne has gotten a little too big for his britches. Because when you can pick up the phone and call the White House and the president answers the phone, that's the problem with Wayne."
The racism did turn to harassment. Not only was he investigated for minor infractions of police code, but, says C. Ron Allen, he was even investigated for a rape charge that ended up being phony after the woman recanted.
They tried to make Wayne's life a living hell for no good reason. He was doing good for the community, and
By this time, Phil Sweeting was the deputy chief of police for the Boca Raton Police Department.
And today they probably refuse to acknowledge that Wayne has done good. But probably the bigger accomplishment is, like I said, once he retired, he's continuing to do it 19 years later, so it wasn't just the uniform.
Wayne did retire in January of 2000, but only after he had sued the city for racial discrimination several months earlier. The months between his suit and his retirement were a living hell, he says, and the settlement, though sizable, was a small consolation.
I took every penny of that money and I donated it to the center. I didn't take one penny from the center. My wife at the time I was married was totally against that. And I think that's why I got a divorce today.
What did she say?
She said, give them 10%, but don't give them all. And I had to explain to her that money wasn't mine. That money is for every person that suffers behind me. Every person that couldn't open their mouth and speak like I spoke.
Since Wayne retired, the Wayne Barton Center has continued to grow. As of this year, Wayne has put 152 kids through college, but he, like others here, fear that the community itself is in jeopardy. Developers are buying up real estate in Pearl City.
Someone that don't have ties to the community can easily will decide to go to the highest bidder because it's always about the dollar. You find the dollar, you find the problem. You know, and that's the thing. We can't always chase the dollar. That's something I've always been. Chase the dollar and sell your soul to the devil, but some people do it.
Wayne credits his donors for keeping him going, but worries gentrification will destroy his center.
Certain amount of time, even I won't be here.
Parts of the original community are in fact protected from the developers by being designated an historic district. But Father Troy, who until recently presided over Macedonia AME, which is in this area, says even the historic area is in jeopardy.
So no, they won't come in here and run us out. They won't come in here with bulldozers and push everybody down. But what they'll do is they'll just let things fall for 30, 40 years and wait for people to die. And then when people go, then all of a sudden, all of these plans pop up and the neighborhood changes. And so the object here is to hold on to what this has always been. It's always been a neighborhood where families have lived. Matter of fact, this church is older than the city of Boca Raton. This was the place, this area was the place where they put black people. This is where we lived. This is where we went to school because this is what we were allowed to be.
And the community is going to go down. Yes, it's going to go down. It will go down. If we don't get out here and do something to try to build it up and get it up. It will go down, yes.
In the meantime, Wayne goes on working with his children in his after-school program. C. Ron Allen, the reporter, started a center of his own in nearby Delray, along the lines of the Wayne Barton Center. Wayne, he says, was his inspiration.
If someone had told me then that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I'd have said, man, you bumped your head. But it just became so infectious. I started doing it, and I stopped once, and parents came to me and said, Mr. Seaman, you can't give up. Because when you work with a child, and when you, in May, when you go to Atlantic High School or the fairgrounds or one of the local auditoriums, and you see that same kid walk across that graduation stage and say, yeah, I did it, and you know you had something to do with that, nothing beats that. How can you stop? How can you give up? And that's what Wayne inspired me to do, to help the least among us.